The sun had barely risen when the people gathered on the hill, overlooking the valley where the Zulu warriors prepared for battle. The air was still cool, but tension hung heavy, as if even the land itself knew that something great was about to unfold. The villagers stood in silence, watching the distant figures of Shaka Zulu soldiers lining up in formation. Among them were the elders and young boys alike, all staring in awe at the scene below. The whispers of the older men spoke of Shaka's genius, and of his new weapon, the iron-tipped spear, the iklwa. Shaka Zulu himself stood at the front of his army. Tall and powerful, his presence was commanding, and even from a distance, his authority was clear. He was not only a king but a warrior, and his men trusted him completely. He had revolutionized the way the Zulu fought, abandoning the old method of throwing spears from a distance. Now, the soldiers carried shorter spears, designed for close combat, and the discipline he had drilled into them made them move with precision, like a single unstoppable force. The Zulu were not alone on the battlefield that day. Opposite them stood the Ndwandwe, a rival tribe led by their chief, Ndwandwe. They had come with overwhelming numbers, believing that their sheer size would be enough to crush the Zulu. The Ndwandwe army was a formidable sight, their long spears shimmering in the sunlight, their warriors brimming with confidence. But deep in their hearts, a shadow of doubt crept in. They had heard of Shaka's tactics, of his iron spears, and of the brutal efficiency of his warriors. And today, they would see it for themselves. Shaka ordered his men into formation. The Zulu warriors spread out across the field in the shape of a bull's horns, a tactic Shaka had perfected in his countless battles. The center of the formation, the chest of the bull, would engage the Ndwandwe directly, while the flanks, the horns, would sweep around and encircle the enemy, trapping them in a deadly grip. It was a strategy that had won him many victories, and today would be no different. The battle began with a deafening roar as the Ndwandwe charged forward. Their war cries echoed across the valley, their long spears thrusting toward the Zulu lines. But Shaka's men did not flinch. They held their shields high, blocking the incoming blows, and then, with a single command from Shaka, they surged forward. The iron spears were drawn, and the warriors struck with deadly precision. The iklwa spear was unlike anything the Ndwandwe had faced before. It was shorter, heavier, and designed for close combat. The Zulu warriors moved swiftly, using their shields to block attacks while stabbing their spears into the bodies of the enemy. The Ndwandwe, with their long spears, were at a disadvantage. They were unable to strike effectively in such tight quarters, and panic began to spread through their ranks. From the hill, the villagers watched as the battle raged below. The noise of clashing shields and spears filled the air, mixed with the shouts of men fighting for their lives. Shaka's warriors fought with a discipline and ferocity that was unmatched. Every movement was calculated, every strike precise. The Ndwandwe began to falter, their confidence crumbling as they realized they were being outmaneuvered. The bull's horns closed in, just as Shaka had planned. The flanking Zulu warriors swept around the side of the Ndwandwe army, cutting off any chance of retreat. The enemy was surrounded, trapped in the center of the field with nowhere to go. Those who could still fight did so desperately, but it was clear that the battle was lost. The Zulu were relentless, their iron spears striking down the enemy with brutal efficiency. Shaka himself was at the heart of the battle, fighting alongside his men. His spear flashed in the sunlight as he cut down anyone who stood in his way. His presence was a source of strength for his warriors, who followed his lead without hesitation. Shaka's eyes were sharp, his movements swift, and it was clear to all who watched that he was not just a king, but a force of nature. As the battle drew to a close, the Ndwandwe ranks began to break. Those who survived the onslaught fled in terror, leaving the battlefield littered with the bodies of their fallen comrades. The Zulu had won decisively, and the victory was absolute. The villagers who had watched from the hill stood in awe, their hearts filled with pride for their king and their warriors. The sun was higher in the sky now, and the field was quiet, save for the sound of the wind blowing over the grass. Shaka's men gathered around him, their faces proud but weary. They had fought hard, and they had triumphed. The iron spear had proven its worth, and Shaka's tactics had once again proven superior. As the villagers descended from the hill to meet the returning warriors, they knew that they had witnessed something historic. Shaka Zulu was not just a leader of men, he was a visionary, a man who had changed the very nature of warfare. The Battle of the Iron Spear would be remembered for generations, not just as a victory, but as the moment when the Zulu rose to become a true force to be reckoned with. The people would speak of this day in hushed tones, telling the story of Shaka Zulu and his iron spears to their children and grandchildren. And in every telling, the name of Shaka would echo with respect, fear, and awe, forever etched into the history of the Zulu people.